Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avocet Communications and host of the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast. Join me and my guests, some of the world's top innovators, disruptors, and visionaries as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies for scaling and growing your brand. Damon Pistulka is here to dismantle the myths and misconceptions surrounding selling businesses. As someone who sells businesses themselves, Damon has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the industry. He knows that many firms give them a bad reputation, and he's here to set the record straight. Damon believes that selling a business should not be a haphazard endeavor. It requires careful assessment and preparation to ensure that the business is sellable and that the potential issues are addressed. He highlights variables that can impact the sellability of a business, such as reliance on a single customer for revenue or outdated technology. Join Damon and me as we provide valuable insights and actionable tips for selling your business in the most successful way possible, including the importance of positioning, branding, and external appearance in selling a business, the common mistakes made in the process of selling a business, the role of cultural fit in acquisitions, assessing the legacy of a company post-acquisition, and increasing the value and marketability of your business. Tune into this episode to discover the untold truths about selling businesses and why it's about more than just making a profit. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Integrate and Ignite podcast. I'm thrilled to have Damon Pistulka with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me here today, Lori.
Well, I tell you, I am so intrigued by your background and what you do day in and day out to help move companies to a great exit, VC investment, whatever it might be. Tell us a little bit more about your company, Exit Your Way.
Yeah, well, you explained it pretty well, Lori. We came out of that market, right? We used to run companies that were held by investment owners or were sold, and we were buying and selling and growing companies. And when we stopped doing that, we realized that many privately held founder-run businesses just don't have that same focus or the skill set to really grow into their business into something that's investable and sellable. And that's really where we help people, is to put the systems and the people and the know-how in place so they can do that.
So I'm sure there was some great background research that really brought you to that understanding, or millions of conversations with CEOs. But why? I mean, CEOs are brilliant. They've got a great idea. They're growing a company. Why is it that they don't gain control and understand this sort of thing?
Well, it's because they're really good at something, right?
Yeah.
Founders are really good at something. I'm a great programmer, or I'm a great manufacturing something. I'm a great e-commerce seller. I'm great this, and they're not great at business.
Right.
And that's really the thing, or they don't understand what investors are really looking for. And that's the key thing. I mean, they're brilliant in what they do. And what we try to do is just to help augment their brilliance and turn what they've developed into something that's valuable to the next owners or the investors or the next person that's going to be making that business generate wealth for them.
You've just, explained the E-Myth in its entirety. A great
Yep.
book. Has been around for decades by Gerber, and he talks about that lady that's making pies all day long,
Mm-hmm.
and says, I see my boss come in at 9 and she leaves at 5, and I come in at 7 and I leave at 6, and I'm going to go do this. They leave the pie making shop. She starts her own business, and she realizes that the weight of the world was on that founder the entire time, and that it's not just showing up at 9 and leaving at 5. She doesn't go to bed till 10 because she's working, and she's actually up at 5 o'clock in the morning working and starting her day. So that E-Myth is definitely very real. In the agency business, we see a lot of creative people start agencies, and they don't have the business savvy to run it and create a culture that's really needed. So we're going to dive in today about how you increase your value and what you can do to ultimately make sure that you are saleable, buyable, whatever it might be. And then we're going to talk about some mistakes that people make along the way.
Very cool.
So buckle up, everyone.
Here we go. Let's do this.
So how is it that companies, basic question, but how can they increase their value?
Well, the value is based on profitability. That's by and large what it is.
A plus B
Sometimes
equals C.
you bet it's
Yeah.
math, right?
Yeah.
And even when you look at a SaaS kind of unicorn company, when you hear these ridiculous values that someone's going to get 50 times revenue or whatever the heck it is, even those companies are based on someone's idea predicting future value.
Mhm.
And so really that's the thing. When you talk about value and growing value, it is really growing the results, the financial performance of the company, or perceived value, depending upon where you're at in the in the cycle of your business, right? So an early stage company can rely on perceived value. They can prove without, as good as they can, that this is the next best thing. This is going to be a whatever, just fill in the blank of the latest, hot company that you see the huge values on, because we can conquer a market differently than someone else or do something differently. Now, those companies, when they're at that early stage, and most people don't know, they actually have an easier time raising money than if they go a bit later and they start generating revenue.
Interesting.
And it just some it depends upon how well they're positioned and those kind of things. But and so growing value is really driving financial performance. First of all, if you're an established company, if you've been selling for a while,
Right.
it's really about what's your profitability and where are you going, because there's two companies are valued completely different. If I've got a company that's been making $1 million profit for the last 20 years, that's what it's doing. We don't have anything great to show why we're going to go to 2 million, but we're rock steady. That's valued much differently than a company that's been making $1 million this year, but going to 1.3 million next year, 1.7 million.
Right.
Going, it's got consistent growth, and I can show you that I'm growing to 5 million because I see my path to 5
The
million and
trajectory's
work
there.
on the trajectory's there. Yeah, the
Right.
trajectory's there. And you've proven it far enough that you go, we're on this path already. You can get on the ride now, or you can wait later. And really, wherever you're at today, looking back about a year, that's how they're going to value your business. And they're going to figure the future potential into that. But the large portion of established business is valued based on the trailing 12 months performance.
Right. So how does that differ by industry? So for instance, an ARR in a subscription SaaS-based company has tremendous value versus a manufacturing company who has the latest and greatest EV technology versus a service organization who might be looking for an exit. They show, 20% year over year growth, but it's driven by the CEO who, guess what, is going to only want to stay for a year. So three distinct differences there. Let's tackle each one and, break down how valuation happens. The company that you brought up, that's been, the steady Eddie at $1 million, a year profit for 20 years doesn't sound too exciting to me.
Yeah, and that's just it. And that's where owners really get lulled into this, right? That, oh, we've been making $1 million forever, and it's created such a wonderful life for us, and put our kids through school, and it's our whole family is set up, and they go, well, it's got to be valuable to somebody else. But the person coming in is looking at it as an investment. They're looking at, they're going to have to go in and they're going to pay the millions of dollars to buy that company, pay that investment back, and want to get a return. And really, if you're steady, you can't pay that much, because if something happens and the business goes down in the future, or it's just not attractive. But growth really helps to cover a lot of things, problems, right? So if your biggest customer leaves, if I got 40-50% growth, yeah, it's going to sting, but it might not kill you, right? But in a flat company, if my biggest customer leaves, it could be detrimental, especially to a buyer that's going to leverage that and going to have bank loans to pay or investors to pay back and returns to do.
Right.
So that's where you look at why growth is so important. But your question about the difference in valuation amongst the different industries, kinds of businesses, there are multiples largely set, I don't want to say arbitrarily set, but it's based on investment risk.
Right.
And it's based across the entire group of investment buyers looking at this. And then it's also set by banks, because you look at investment buyers, they, based on risk, they're going to take all your information and they're going to say, great, you made $1 million a month. And that's worth, on the street, that's worth about this much of a multiple of that, your EBITDA. And cool, that's where we start. Now, do you have a really strong sales engine that looks like you're going to pull ahead of the industry? Do you have some great customers that look like it? Is your team super strong, or is it not? And, everything goes up and down from there.
Right.
And then you have to come back again to the multiples I talked about. Whatever industry that business is in has its own multiples that are going to adjust based on like capital requirements, ease of scaling, competition, and IP that you own, especially in unicorn kind of things. The IP could be why they're paying that multiple.
More valuable than
yeah,
even the customer base at that,
you bet,
at that time.
you bet. It's those kind of things. So it's a combination of a lot of things. When you're down and you're just, say you've got a small, whatever, e-commerce company, manufacturing company, whatever it is, down the street, making $1 million a year in profit, that's largely going to be based on, what your debt service ratio is at a bank to cover the loan to buy it.
Right.
And right now, and interest rates going up took away a lot of buying power. About 20% of the buying power evaporated with interest rates going up. But it's like right now, if you just do on a bank debt service ratio, it takes about $225,000 a year to cover $1 million in value.
Wow.
So, if you've got $1 million, you're about $4 or $5 million in.
Yeah, it usually based on that math, it's usually 3 to 6 times based on, several criteria that you defined. One of the things that I think is really interesting when you talked about customer base is what is the right mix of customer base regarding the number of customers to overall percentage of revenue. That gorilla client can really snuff out good deals.
Yeah, it sure can. And it varies with industry, obviously, because if I'm a manufacturer, say, serving the automotive industry, how many customers am I really going to have? I might have 10. I might be $100 million company, and we really look at customer concentration more than anything. So if you look, and one of my customers is more than 15-20% of my total revenue, that's a pretty big deal. If you're a fast growing customer or company and it's not growing with that customer, that's really good, because I'm taking that down and raising the ratios of my other customers up. But really, you want to have enough customers that you don't have, more than 15 or 20% concentration in any one customer.
Right. As you're explaining all this, I'm giggling a little bit inside, because we work with a lot of entrepreneurial driven companies, and they'll either be going after VC or they'll be getting ready to sell. And, they obviously include us, in not in the meetings with the buyers by any stretch of of our imagination, but certainly helping them get ready, from a brand standpoint, and even pitching. And when we get to the table, I would say 1 out of 10 is truly ready. And the other 9 companies, we spend a great deal of time getting them ready to talk to someone like you, and not, managing P&Ls or income statements or anything like that, but it's truly, the positioning, the brand worthiness, the brand strength, the customer base, all these sort of things that become very, very important. Is my assessment of 1 in 10 true to what you ultimately, when they get to you, what your feeling is about readiness?
Yeah, I think you're probably overestimating it a little bit.
Yeah. We're
But I
proud of
mean,
what we do. No.
yeah, but you bring up a great point, and I'm going to go off onto that for just a minute, is that you coming in and helping with the positioning, the branding, and just how that company looks to the outside world is so critical to the process. Because if it
Right.
looks tired, if it's not really showing the true value of the company and the value of the company going into the future, they are not preparing their company for sale. Because
Right.
preparing your company for sale is much different than preparing than selling your products. Right now, you think of your business as a product or as a service, and you are going to sell that business as such. We take an extraordinary amount of time to position our products and services, make sure we're talking to the customers just right. Well, when I'm selling my business, that's usually a multi-million dollar, journey for us.
Right.
But we don't think about it. Most
Yeah.
of the time, people don't think about it. It's like, you got to think about it, because it is so critical that you will literally lose deals if you don't worry about the positioning and branding and then preparing your company. And that's where we step in, is really preparing that company so it's attractive from a structural and a performance based look by those buyers. But you brought up this positioning, and I'm going to stick on it a while, because it is so key. These buyers want to see that business rocketing forward, generating more wealth for them.
Right. Yeah, that's the only reason to buy, so that it can ultimately, benefit them. What we say quite often to brands, when we start with them, is that the product, service or solution they're providing the marketplace is stronger than the perception that the brand is creating in the marketplace. So they've had a lot of luck, and a lot of, probably great sales teams, quite frankly, or the CEO, with relationships. But if they want to move to the next level, it's an absolute must that brand strength be increased. I mean, there's growth strategies and there's brand strategies. You can't have a great growth strategy without a strong brand strategy in place.
That is correct.
Yeah.
You've got to get that out there.
Well, I love it. And what are some of the other things that you see CEOs, that it might be a surprise to them that they're just not as ready as they thought they were?
Well, there's a few things that come to mind. One is that they haven't built a team that's got value outside of themselves.
Right.
I mean, it's real easy in founder-led companies to have a super smart person, especially if they're really gifted in a certain skill, that can put enough people around them to develop a multi-million-dollar company and it'd be doing really well. But that multi-million-dollar company has to do really well without them,
Right.
to be valuable to the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the biggest thing that we see. And I mean, it's not just a 6-figure, 7-figure kind of company. It's the 8-figure companies that we really run into, that it's a huge problem, because they're sitting there going, hey, I make a couple $1 million a year. You're telling me that this is not going to be sellable, and they're saying, well, I can go down the street and find somebody that'll tell me it's sellable, and yeah, they can.
Right.
But the likelihood of them selling it for anything near what it's worth or at all is so low when they're the brains in the whole business. They just got to get out of that.
And how important is age in that situation? Because, buyers also want continuity.
Mm-hmm.
And change management is hard. So when they're buying a company, they don't want, a bunch of 50-somethings working there that they know are going to retire in 10 years. They've got to have those younger generations in the mix as well, so that they can continue to move them along.
Yeah, I would say, if your team can see retirement in the horizon, I'm saying in the next 5+ years, then you've got some things you might want to address.
Right.
But buyers are usually looking for, do I have a 5 to 7 year runway? Investment buyers anyway, right?
Right.
That's their, because they're going to buy it, they're going to grow it, they're going to get out of it. Unless it's a family office that wants to buy and hold for the long term. the other investment buyers are going to be going for that 5 to 7 year exit.
Mhm.
Some shorter, some a little longer, but so your team, you really have to look and beyond, we're going to have people of all ages sprinkled in, but your key team, the core team that's going to execute has to have some longevity to it.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
You bring up investment buyers, and this is a really interesting point to me, because we work with many brands who have investment buyers. We have, 3 clients that we've worked with. 2 of them have had billion-dollar plus IPOs. And that's the point that actually we leave because, we don't have that investment PR experience, investor relations experience. But then, a $250 million IPO, that's now $750 million. Those to me are far easier for marketers to navigate through than an investment buyer or even some VC-backed funding, because we have, I will say that we've got a couple clients right now with investment bankers, on the board now. And those relationships are working fairly well. But there have been some in the past where the buyer changes so much operationally about the company. All of the vendors that have been loyal for many, many years are off the table. And it's almost like they're starting a brand new startup because there's so much of a shakeup. In one situation, about 40% of the team left. Because, it was just not fun anymore. So what are the pros and cons to, the 3 different scenarios, investment banker, VC funding, and then just an IPO or a true exit that you've seen over the years?
Well, yeah, that's a great point because it really comes down to cultural differences, right?
Right.
And no matter how you sugarcoat it, and let's see how I want to say this.
You mean how you want to sugarcoat it?
Yeah. If you're the company being acquired, more than likely you're going to undergo the change. Right. You're going to have to adapt to their culture. It's a given.
Yeah.
Right. So when people are exiting, one of the things that owners often overlook is cultural fit, where the other company is going, and what they want to really do with your company.
Right.
Because everybody's like, oh, we're all, the founders are happy, right? Because they're going to get millions of dollars usually.
Yeah.
But if they truly want to look to consider their legacy, they have to go a couple levels deeper with those buyers and really go, okay, let me talk to 5 other acquisitions you've done in the last year under this portfolio company. I want to understand how they feel about it now that they've been in it a while. Do you have anybody that's been in it for a couple of years? Because we want to see how much was their turnover.
Right.
Because
such a good advice.
Yeah, that's the investigation that sellers often forget to do because they're so caught up, because deals are hard to do. It's emotional. There's a lot of stress or a lot of negotiation they're not used to. But that investigation to really make sure that your legacy is going to continue on like you want is critical, because like you said, you can lose all of it. They can kill the secret sauce in the company. And we've seen that a lot of times, because let's be honest, big companies buy little companies to kill ideas all the time.
Oh yeah.
And it just happens. And if that's going to happen to you, just realize that's what's happening.
It's and every brand that we've worked with, and the companies have been sold, no matter what, they've always said to themselves, we think we have the people that will carry the culture on. And I will tell you, 9 out of 10 times they were wrong. And one of my girlfriends sold her bank, and she interviewed companies for 3 years and still ended up with the wrong buyer. And she just in her heart felt like it was the right one. Is there ever the right buyer, or is change imminent?
Change is imminent.
Yeah.
But there are better buyers than others. And that is looking at the historical record
Acquisition,
that they
yeah.
have. Yeah, just look at those other acquisitions and see what you learn from those, because your friend truly was trying to do the best thing for her legacy, and that's all you can do, really,
Right.
is do the best. Because it's the other thing too, is selling a business is nothing, and we'll say it again, nothing like selling real estate or selling anything like that, because
Mhm.
there's no value to anyone other than you unless they think there is.
Right.
In real
Well,
estate, there's value. There's value to dirt, right? There's
right.
value to
You're
buildings,
getting
right?
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Buyers will look at a business that, hey, it's making me $1 million a month, and say, I want nothing to do with it.
Hmm.
And you can talk to 1,000 buyers and they're going to tell you that.
Right.
And
You
that's the thing the owners really forget.
you talk a lot about the focus on selling a business as is, whereas ASAP.
Yeah.
Explain that
Yeah.
juxtaposition, if you will, to our listeners today.
Yeah. And this is where I say our company sells businesses, right?
Right.
But I talk bad about the industry of selling businesses all day long. I like to point out the obvious.
There are a lot of agencies that don't give us a good reputation as well. So I understand.
So the vast majority of people selling businesses sell them as is, where is, right?
Mhm.
They're going to come to you and you're going to say, hey, my business makes this much money. They're going to say, great, we can sell it for this much money. Based on that, they don't go into the depth of, is it really sellable? Are we really fooling ourselves, all of us, that
Mhm.
we can sell this because you've got one customer that makes up 97% of your revenue, or your technology is dying even though you're still profitable, or so many other things that are variables. Your team isn't strong enough. It's, they're, like we talked about, the industry is built on a success fee basis of selling, of gaining investment, whatever you're talking about, right? So a lot of investment brokers and business investment bankers, business brokers, they rely on having a lot of deals in process,
Mhm.
because they know that if I have 100 deals, I'm going to get 25 or 30 of those done. Just think of
Right.
those odds. How
Yeah.
stinky are those odds for
20 to
those owners?
30%. Yeah.
Yeah, those owners that's a stinky odd for them, right?
Right.
And that's why I talk about, you don't want to sell as is, where is. We don't do that with homes anymore, right?
Right.
How many people sell $1 million plus homes without staging them anymore, without doing
Right.
significant amount of work? Because we know that it can get us 10, 20, 30% more when we get out of them. Why the hell aren't we doing this for businesses?
Well, and that's that market readiness that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yep.
look at my valuation every single month at the end of each month with my financials. It's a
Mhm.
KPI that I look at and that I measure against. I've got 17 core areas, 3 of which that I know I need to improve on in order to ultimately be ready for other family members to take over, or through acquisition, or
Mhm.
maybe I buy some other marketing firms out there. But the difference is I look at it every single month. I am making the company market ready for the future. And people think that it can happen overnight. And what you're saying is it can't happen overnight. There's a lot of market readiness that has to go into it. And just making it and pushing it out as is isn't going to create the valuation that ultimately they can obtain.
Or the success. The
Yeah.
valuation or the success. I mean, that's why the 75 to 80% don't sell, because they don't take the time to prepare. And it's
Yeah.
usually a multi-million-dollar deal.
Is
I
it
go back to,
ego? Is it just ego?
well, no, it's
Huh.
the fact that I think it's the fact that business owners don't really understand what a buyer is looking for. And that's why I talk so much about, hey, it's got to be ready for the buyer. It's even the exact kind of buyer.
Yeah.
And like we talked about today, involvement of the owner in the business, customer concentration, all those kind of team, and it's so many different things that have to be ready to really position your company to be sold or to be attractive to that buyer. When you don't do that, you rely completely on luck that you're going to find somebody that's going to meet you where you are to buy what you've got.
Right.
Think about how ugly that would be
Hmm.
if you were selling products like that.
Right.
And we don't spend the time to sell our most valuable asset usually
Hmm.
and prepare it to make it better, more
Yeah.
attractive.
Well, and that's where I think, we run into a lot of entrepreneurial visionary mindsets that are either sales driven or they're marketing driven, and
Mhm.
they're not sales and marketing driven. And in most situations, they're sales driven. Back to the original discussion, they aren't placing value on marketing and what ultimately it can achieve. So I would agree that a lot of companies, or it's not companies, the leadership believes that it's saleable because they're too close to it. And they aren't seeing, again, the trees through the forest on where the company can go with the right prep work, which is exactly, Damon, what you provide these companies. In older, you increase their valuation so that they can, increase the money's on the bottom line at the end of the day. And there's a lot to be said for that. Are you seeing right now, this is a bit of a loaded question because I know the answer, but I'm just want your gut reaction to it. What industries are attractive right now to investment bankers versus VC funding versus outright buying?
Well, I don't really know specific industries. I just know that across the ecosphere of businesses getting bought and sold, the interest rate increase has really affected values. So
Right.
when you're looking at businesses that are attractive, they have to be growing fast right now
Hmm.
to continue to garner the highest value or have that technology that's going to be really game changing for the
Hmm.
industry.
And so that's again the ARR, and, fast growth with, our growth rate is, we can manage, we've had several years of 20% year over year growth. We can manage
Mhm.
about 10%. Those are hard for a service organization and in a, time period where a lot of people don't want to work. That's difficult to deliver. But, all those things being said, the fast growth with the ARR in the tech industry right now with apps, with AI, it seems to be, the carrot that everyone's hanging, over people's noses right now.
Yeah, and I don't think that's changed. I mean, there's
Yeah.
always been, because SaaS businesses are really niche. They're really specific, like you said. You have
Mhm.
to have something good, but when people see something good, they'll pay a heck of a lot of money for it.
Right.
And the one thing I will bring out there is when you see a SaaS company getting a crazy amount of money for their business by a private equity VC investor or whatever, don't think that top line number that you see, they got $100 million, that's not all money to those owners, or it's
Right.
not all money that's going into their pocket today. It's likely going to be structured so that they might get out of 100, they might get 10 in the beginning and have to go a long way to get the 100.
Right.
It's kind of like when you see an NFL contract for somebody that's, I'm going to get $200 million on an NFL contract. Well, if they get hurt, it's not all guaranteed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's like if the investor uncovers something,
Hmm.
once the hood is open,
Yeah.
it's going to be a different story. There's no doubt about it. I have seen the investment bankers and the PE firms and, the VCs doing far more market intelligence on the company than the CEO doing on those potential investors.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a great point, because we will talk with that about as we're getting businesses ready to sell. It's like, what's your market position? What's your total addressable market with what you've got? What have you really looked at that? Who are your major competitors? Oftentimes they have no idea.
Right.
They just had a good idea and they started doing it and started making money. But investors want to know that because they're really looking at other risks that
Mhm.
the founders and the owners now don't even understand.
Right.
So yeah, that's a big one that gets overlooked.
And are you actually getting into the weeds with your potential clients about what their TAM is? Are you, are you getting involved in letting them know what that addressable market is? Or, we do that sort of stuff day in and day out, but how often do you see that lack of preparedness as something as, what the market availability is?
Well, we don't do it directly, but we
Mhm.
always have someone that's going to do it, right?
Right.
We have to bring in people like you guys that would be able to do that because it's a standard part of what we do. You got to
Right.
look at that market. You got to understand what's happening in that industry. You got to understand, really what that is, because the other thing that sellers of businesses or people that are looking for investment assume is that investors know about their industry just because
Right.
they've invested in their industry, and they really don't.
Right.
So all this stuff helps to create a better picture of why someone would want to invest in that business or buy that business, because they don't. Investors don't. I mean, investors know how to make good investments most of the time,
Hmm.
but they rely on all the information you can provide.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned a few minutes ago that 20 to 30% of the deals actually get done. So
Mhm.
that's 70 to 80% that are not investment worthy, sale worthy, whatever it might be. Of all of that, what is the number one reason, the most common reason why a deal doesn't happen?
Unrealistic value expectations of the owner.
Mm, right.
Yeah, I think it's worth more than it really is. I mean, it's
Mhm.
at the end of the day, value is math. Like I
Right.
said at the very beginning, it's either proven value if my company has been going for a while, or it's perceived value if I'm, develop some technology that we're releasing to the market.
Hmm.
They're gonna, and it's not the math that we do as someone that's selling a business, it's the buyer, because I can show them projections all day about how we're going to grow 20% because we've grown 20% the last 10 years. They might think that there's risks that means we're only going to grow 5%. You're
Right.
20%. I mean, they're going to take, it was a shock to me the first time when I was running businesses for investment owners and selling a couple of them, right? Because I thought that, well, we gave them the projections and we met these projections, it should be good. No, they adjust it all. It's like you give them all that, they go, yeah, that's cool, we're going to make our own.
Is that
And
just a negotiating tactic?
no, it's a reality. I mean,
Yeah.
they have to look at their investments, and they're trying to truly gain the risk, because yeah, they want to buy right, but they'll pay more if it's worth more. I
Right.
mean, but they really got to know what it's worth,
Hmm.
because that decision it means their livelihood.
I have a friend who had a company in the app space, and his ARR was 10 million, and he sold it for over $100 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
And apps and tech, I mean, they do garner more. Um, but he worked 2 years to make the deal happen. 2 years, and he hired a CEO. He stepped aside,
Yeah.
hired a CEO to get the company ready to sell. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is where a lot of people just don't have that intuition or that ego or the intuitiveness to say, okay, I need to step aside to get this ready to sell.
Yeah. It's a great example. I'm glad you brought that up. We had a client last year that did the same thing, hired a CEO. We were working with him. We said, listen, you're too involved in this. Why don't you hire a CEO? He found a really good CEO.
Right.
And then that CEO really got in, and they started growing the business much faster. And it ended up that when we sold the business, the CEO, which was an employee of the company, yes, he had a little bit of ownership in it, but the CEO was presenting to buyers.
Right.
That is the thing. The owner was in the room,
Right.
and the owner was answering questions, but their CEO, they were doing all this is where we're going. This is
Hmm.
why things are what it is. They were answering the questions. That, like your friend did, is probably one of the smartest things someone can do
Right.
that wants to really sell their company for a lot of money. Because when you can do that, you've just proven that your company has all the value without you.
Right.
or a lot of the value without you.
And you can easily walk at that stage too, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, the company's going to run without you. One of the key points of what we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like you said, you could hold the company at that point. You could work on strategic growth initiatives only and let the CEO make sure that they're getting executed and things are happening. And, you can work on super big picture things for a while until it gets to the value you want. But having those people in there to execute, or as a CEO would develop and execute the vision is critical to establishing business value.
So what's your prediction? We're out of COVID. We are in a recession period. Interest rates are higher than they've been in, decades. We're expecting a huge downturn, another economic crash potentially in 2030. What do people need to do for the next 7 years to get themselves ready?
Well, I thought, business is going to go up and down, right? It's going to go up and down. Economies are going to change. But at the end of the day, if you've got a good business, you can make money in a bad economy. Right. And I just want people listening to this to understand the economy can suck, but you don't have to go with it.
You don't have to suck too.
No, you don't have to go with it, honestly, because if you are continually working with your company to be better at delivering value to your customer base, to doing what you're doing and really working on the value of the company. And this is where marketing comes in. Comes where the sales engine comes in. And this comes when delivery of product and services. There's always enough business to make money. It's the poor companies in your industry that will suffer the most.
That's right.
If you're at the top 10%, you got nothing to worry about. You might go down some, but you probably won't go down much.
Right.
And do that, because even in a bad economy, you can develop a business that's worth good money. And the only thing that is, let's face it, interest rates have been artificially low for 10, 15 years.
Right.
We're just too low. I think we're just getting back to a more reasonable,
normalized
level, right? So we have to do a little value check on that, because when you're at whatever we're at now and you're so much, 20% higher value just because of interest rates, we have to do that. So grow your business and get over that. Get over that hump that you got hit with. But I just think that good businesses survive.
Yeah.
You'll adapt and survive.
You are so optimistic and such a positive force behind the vision and the dream that so many people have today. I really appreciate your insights, Damon. It's been a pleasure. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me on LinkedIn. Is one of the places I hang out a lot. Damon Pistulka. There's only one of me.
That's where I found you.
Yep. Exityourway.com. That's our website, or just Damon@exityourway.com will get me by email.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate your insights and taking the time to share your wisdom today with our audience. Thank you, Damon, so much for your appearance on the Integrate and Ignite podcast.
Thanks for having me today, Lori.
This episode is complete. Head over to avocetcommunications.com for more ways to scale and grow your business. And be sure to tune in regularly for insights and motivation with host Lori Jones and her guests on the Integrate and Ignite Marketing Podcast.